The first person to ruin my life did it with a smile. It was my 18th birthday. Balloons in the living room. A sheet cake from the bakery on Main. My dad, Greg, pulled me into the hallway, put a hand on my shoulder like he was about to say something tender, and whispered, "Once the guests leave, you're just going to sign a few papers for Uncle Wade. Standard stuff. Don't worry about it." I smiled back at him. I nodded. I even said, "Okay, Dad." Then I walked into the kitchen, opened my laptop, and transferred every cent of my inheritance from my grandparents into an irrevocable trust. Every dollar. The cabin. The savings. The investments. All of it. Locked behind a door that no one, not my father, not my uncle, not a lawyer with a briefcase full of threats, could ever open again. I did this at 11:57 p.m. 3 minutes before I turned legal. Because I knew what was coming. The next morning, my dad's face went the color of old milk. My Uncle Wade, who had already signed a contract to sell a property he didn't even own, started screaming into his phone. My mom just stood there in the kitchen, holding a coffee mug she forgot to drink from, staring at me like I'd turned into a stranger. They thought they had control. They thought I was just a kid who would sign whatever they put in front of her. They forgot that my grandfather raised me differently. Before I tell you how this ends, and trust me, the ending is not what any of them expected, let me ask you something. Have you ever had to smile at someone while secretly building a wall between you and them? If you have, you already understand this story. Drop a pin in the comments with your city and the time where you are. I read every single one. Now let me take you back 6 years. Back to Cedar Lake. Back to the last time anyone in my family told me the truth. I was 12 when my grandfather Harold picked me up in his old truck and drove us 40 minutes to the lake. The cabin sat back in the trees, surrounded by white pines so tall they blocked out the afternoon sun. The porch sagged on one side. The screen door never latched right. And inside, it smelled like wood smoke and old books and something sweet I could never name. "Grab the other end," he said, handing me a fence rail. We spent the morning replacing rotted posts along the south fence. He never rushed me. He showed me how to press my thumb into the wood. "If it gives," he said, "it's done." Inside, my grandmother Vivian had iced tea waiting on the table. The same table my grandfather built the year they got married. She didn't ask what I wanted on my sandwich. She already knew. That evening, we sat on the porch watching the lake turn gold. And my grandfather wiped sawdust off his hands and said something I didn't understand for 6 more years. "This cabin stays in the family," he said. Then he looked at me, really looked. "But family isn't always blood, Iris. Family is whoever shows up." I was 12. I thought he was being poetic. He wasn't. That whole summer, I came back every weekend. I learned where the water heater leaked. Which window stuck. How to bleed the radiator. In October, my grandmother taught me to organize the bookshelves by color because it makes the room feel warmer. My grandfather walked me to the property lines and showed me the iron stakes he'd hammered in himself. I didn't know then that he was already talking to a lawyer. That he was already building a cage of legal paper around this place. And that he was putting the only key in my hand before I was old enough to understand what I was holding. Back home, the air was different. Our house in Ridgemont was fine. 3 bedrooms. A yard that needed mowing. A garage my dad used as an office for his failing building supply store. Just fine. Not warm. Fine. My sister Kelsey had the bigger bedroom. Lavender walls. A desk lamp that cost more than my entire bookshelf. At dinner, my dad brought up the cabin like it was a problem to solve. "The place is just sitting there losing value. Property taxes alone are killing us. We should sell it and reinvest." My mom nodded. "Makes sense." "Grandpa said the cabin stays in the family," I said. My dad laughed. "Not mean. Worse. Dismissive. Like I'd said something cute. You were 12, Iris. He was just being nice. Nobody asked me anything else. The conversation moved to Kelsey's debate trophy. I had won the district science fair 2 weeks earlier. The ribbon was still in my backpack. After dinner, I cleared the plates. On the counter, half hidden under a grocery list, there was a glossy flyer. A development company. Lakefront lots. Premium prices. There was a handwritten phone number in the margin. I didn't know whose handwriting it was. Not my dad's. I put the flyer back exactly where I found it. Upstairs, I sat on my bed and thought about my grandfather's kitchen table. The one he built with his hands. The one where my grandmother set my sandwich without asking what I wanted. Then I thought about the flyer downstairs. Someone was already measuring my grandparents' home in dollars. And they hadn't even waited for the funeral. My grandfather died 2 years later. I was 14. The funeral was on a Tuesday. Gray sky. Damp grass. Folding chairs that sank into the lawn. I sat in the second row holding his handkerchief, blue plaid, frayed at the edges, smelling faintly of pine. Afterward, I saw my dad and my Uncle Wade standing by the dessert table. Not eating. Talking low. Wade had a folder tucked under his arm. I caught one sentence before I turned away. We should move on this before probate gets complicated. They were talking about the cabin. At the funeral. I said nothing. I was 14. I had no power, no voice, and no idea that my grandfather had already planned for this exact moment. 2 more years passed. My grandmother got sick in March and was gone by June. She held my hand the last time I visited, her grip surprisingly firm. The cabin is yours, Iris, she whispered. Don't let them take it. Promise me. I promised. After her funeral, another gray day, same folding chairs, my dad sat at our kitchen table and said to my mom, now we can finally sort out the property. He said it with relief. Like something heavy had finally lifted. That same evening, my uncle called. I heard my dad on the phone in the garage, pacing. Yeah, no, I agree. Let's get it moving. I was standing in the hallway holding a glass of water. And I realized something that sat in my chest like a stone. My grandmother's death wasn't a loss to them. It was a clearance. I didn't cry that night. I made a different kind of decision. I just didn't know how to act on it yet. Between 16 and 18, the cabin became my quiet rebellion. Every Saturday morning, I drove out to Cedar Lake in the used Honda I bought with babysitting money. I patched the porch screen. Replaced the weather stripping. Swept pine needles off the roof because my grandfather taught me that's how leaks start. At home, the conversation shifted. The cabin stopped being Grandpa's place and started being the family property. My dad said this at dinner like it had always been true. My uncle started showing up more often. Every other Sunday. Sometimes with manila folders. Sometimes with a laptop open to real estate listings. I tried once. What about Grandma's wish? She wanted me to keep it. My mom put down her fork gently. The way she does before correcting someone's homework. Your grandmother was emotional at the end, sweetie. This is business. Business. That's the word they used for everything that used to be love. By 17, my dad started being more direct. When you turn 18, we'll figure this out as a family. The way he said family, I knew what he really meant. His way. Then, one November afternoon, I was alone at the cabin clearing out the hall closet. Behind a stack of old quilts, I found a sealed envelope in my grandmother's handwriting. My name on the front. Inside was a single business card. A lawyer's name. Margaret Caldwell. And below that, printed in small type, Tmain Family Trust. My hand shook. Not from fear. From recognition. My grandmother left this here for me to find. She knew I'd be the one cleaning out closets. Not my dad. Not my uncle. Me. I slipped the card into my wallet and didn't call. Not yet. 3 months before my 18th birthday, Margaret Caldwell called me first. The call came on a Thursday evening in February. I was in my room doing homework when my phone lit up with an unknown number. Iris, this is Margaret Caldwell. I was your grandparents' attorney. Her voice was steady. Professional. Careful. Like someone who had rehearsed this opening. I need to speak with you before your birthday. There are things you need to know, and there isn't much time. We met the following Saturday at her office downtown. Alone. Margaret was in her late 50s. Silver hair. Reading glasses on a chain. Her office smelled like old paper and coffee. She sat across from me, opened a folder, and said words that tilted the entire room. Your grandparents hired me 6 years ago. They established an irrevocable trust. The cabin, a savings account, and an investment portfolio. Total value, approximately $2.1 million. All of it is held in the trust. You are the sole beneficiary. I couldn't breathe. They transferred everything while they were alive. Legally, it never entered their estate. It can't go through probate. Your father and uncle have no claim. She slid a document across the desk. My name on the second line. The title to the cabin had been recorded under the trust 6 years ago. Why didn't they tell him? I asked. Margaret paused. Then she said, your grandfather's exact words were, my sons will sell that cabin before the funeral flowers wilt. The room went quiet. I stared at the paper with my name on it. Then Margaret said something else. Someone has been making inquiries at the county recorder's office about the cabin's title. Within the last month. I started paying attention after that meeting. Not suspiciously. Just quietly. The next Sunday, my uncle came over for dinner. Afterward, he and my dad disappeared into the garage. The door was open a crack. Not enough to see. But enough to hear. I already signed the purchase agreement with the development company, my uncle said. $450,000. But we need the title clean before closing. How do we get it clean? My dad's voice came back, quieter. Quitclaim deed. Mom and Dad are gone. We're the legal heirs. We quitclaim the property to ourselves, record it, and sell. Is that legal? It's a standard transfer between heirs. Nobody's going to question it. A pause. Then my dad said, even quieter, what about Iris? My uncle's answer came fast. Like he'd already thought about it. She's 17. She can't do anything. By the time she's 18, the sale goes through. Done deal. She'll be upset. She'll get over it. We'll give her a cut. 50 grand for college. She should be grateful. I stepped back from the garage door. My hands were cold. My uncle had already signed a purchase agreement for a cabin he didn't own, on land held in a trust he didn't know existed. That night, I texted Margaret 2 words. They're accelerating. Her reply came in 3 minutes. I expected that. Come see me Saturday. We'll prepare everything you need. I closed my phone and stared at the ceiling. In the next room, my sister was watching a show, laughing at something. Downstairs, my parents were loading the dishwasher, talking about weekend plans like nothing was happening. And in the garage, in my uncle's folder, there was a contract that was already worthless. He just didn't know it yet. The night before my birthday, I drove to the cabin alone. The road was quiet. Cedar Lake sat flat and dark under a half-moon. I parked in the gravel patch my grandfather had leveled himself. Walked up the porch steps. Sat in the chair next to the one that used to be his. At midnight, I opened my laptop. Margaret had sent the full document package. The acceptance form. The beneficiary designation. Everything flagged with sticky tabs, ready for my signature. I read each document twice. Then I closed my laptop and listened to the lake. My grandfather used to sit right there and say, "Patience isn't weakness, Iris. It's timing." I always thought he was talking about fishing. I cried then. Not a collapse. Just a quiet overflow I let happen. I cried because I wished this were different. I wished my dad had been the kind of man who would have taken me fishing instead of calculating resale value. I wished my mom had asked what I wanted instead of telling me what was practical. I wished I didn't have to sign a legal document at midnight to protect myself from the people who were supposed to protect me. But wishes don't hold up in court. Trust documents do. I wiped my face, locked the cabin door, drove home, set my alarm for 11:45 p.m., and waited. At 11:50 p.m., I connected the video call. Margaret appeared in her home office, reading glasses on, a stack of papers lit by a desk lamp. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready." When the clock hit midnight, she walked me through the signing. I put my name on the page. From that second forward, every decision about the trust's assets ran through me and Margaret as co-trustees. "First thing tomorrow morning," she said, 8 a.m., "I'll go to the county recorder's office and file a lease pendens. That's a public notice that says there's a legal interest pending on the property. Once it's recorded, no one can sell, transfer, or touch that title while it's active." I looked at the signed paper in my hand. My name in ink. My grandparents' names in print above mine. Margaret's voice softened. "This isn't a trick, Iris. This is your grandfather's last gift. You just had to be old enough to accept it." Downstairs in the garage, my uncle was printing a quitclaim deed. He called my dad at 11:30. "Everything's ready. We file at 9. Just make sure Iris is distracted with birthday stuff first." He also had a second document open on his laptop, the purchase agreement with the development company. Closing date 30 days after the quitclaim was recorded. If he couldn't deliver a clean title within that window, he'd owe a $45,000 penalty. Plus damages. He'd signed that agreement 2 months earlier. Before he'd even verified who owned the property. He just assumed. He assumed nobody had planned otherwise. My uncle had bet nearly $500,000 on a piece of paper that didn't belong to him. And in a few hours, when he walked into the county recorder's office with his confident handshake, he was going to find out that the entire chain of title told a completely different story. My birthday party started at 4 in the afternoon. Balloons. A banner. 20 people. Neighbors. Church friends. My sister's best friend's family. I smiled. I thanked everyone. I opened small gifts. In my jacket pocket, folded into a neat square, was the signed acceptance form from midnight. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. It was already done. Then my dad stood up near the cake table and tapped his glass. The room went quiet. "I just want to say, Iris is officially an adult today. Denise and I are so proud of her." He paused, looking around the room. "And as a family, we have some exciting plans for the future." He looked at me and smiled. "Right, Iris." Every face turned toward me. "Thanks, Dad," I said. "Nothing more." He waited a beat, then laughed it off and raised his glass. From the corner of my eye, I saw my uncle by the front door, checking his phone, typing something fast with both thumbs. After the cake was cut, my dad stood again. This time his voice was louder. More deliberate. The voice of a man who'd been waiting for an audience. "Before we wrap up, I want to share something with everyone. Our family has been going through a tough time financially. Some of you know about the store. It's been hard." Sympathetic murmurs. "But Harold and Vivian, my parents, they left us something. The cabin at Cedar Lake. And as a family, we've decided to sell it to secure everyone's future." He looked right at me. "Iris understands. She knows this is what's best for all of us, Right, sweetheart. The room waited. I set my fork on my plate. The clink was the only sound. I never agreed to sell the cabin, Dad. His smile stayed fixed, but the muscles around his jaw tightened. She's kidding. Birthday nerves. I'm not kidding. My uncle stepped forward from the doorway. Come on, Iris. This isn't the time or place. I picked up my glass of water, took a slow sip, and set it down. You're right, Uncle Wade. This isn't the time. I held his gaze. The time is 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Silence. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't check it. No one moved. The guests started leaving after that. Polite goodbyes. Tight smiles. Within 30 minutes, the living room was down to family and two neighbors who seemed unsure whether to stay or go. My mom waited until the front door closed, then turned on me in the kitchen. Do you have any idea what your father is going through? He might lose this house. Our house. And you're holding on to a cabin you visit on weekends. I visit every weekend, Mom. That's not the point. She pressed her palms flat on the counter. We are a family. Families make decisions together. And if you loved this family, you wouldn't need a lawyer to tell you what to do. The room went still. I stared at her. How do you know about a lawyer? She didn't flinch. Wade found the business card in your bag last week. Margaret Caldwell. Who is she? My stomach dropped. Not from fear. From the realization that they'd been going through my things. Searching for something they could use. Then my dad closed the kitchen door. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. He pulled out a chair and sat down. Here's what's going to happen, Iris. Tomorrow morning, Wade and I go to the county office. We file the paperwork. The cabin sells. You get your share, a fair share, and we move on as a family. What's my share? 50,000. Out of how much? He didn't answer. My uncle filled the gap from the doorway. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I looked at my dad. And if I say no? His jaw set. If you fight this, you're on your own. No more help with college. No more living under this roof. The kitchen was very quiet. The faucet dripped once. You're threatening to kick me out on my 18th birthday. I'm asking you to be part of this family. I pushed back from the table and stood up. My voice was steady, even though my hands weren't. I am part of this family, Dad. I'm the part that keeps promises. I walked past my uncle, past my sister sitting on the stairs with her knees pulled to her chest, and I went upstairs. I closed my door. I sat on my bed and breathed. My dad thought his deadline was 9 a.m. at the county recorder's office. He didn't know that Margaret's deadline was 8. At 8 a.m. the next morning, the county recorder's office opened. Fluorescent lights flickered on. A clerk in a blue cardigan unlocked the front counter. Margaret Caldwell was the first person through the door. Gray blazer. Leather folder. She approached the counter, presented 2 documents, a certified copy of the trust and a lease pendants notice, and asked for them to be recorded against the Cedar Lake property. The clerk reviewed the paperwork. Checked the existing title records. Stamped it recorded. Done. At 8:14 a.m., Margaret called me. It's done. The property is flagged. Whatever they bring in will be rejected. I was sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal. Normal morning sounds. Water running. A closet door. The clink of a belt buckle. At 8:30, my dad and uncle came downstairs together. My dad was wearing his business shirt, the one he wore to bank meetings before the store went under. My uncle had his folder tucked under his arm. We'll be back by lunch, my dad said, grabbing his keys. I looked up from my bowl. Good luck, I said. He paused in the doorway. Looked at me. Something in my voice, maybe. Or something in my face. Then he turned and walked out. I rinsed my cereal bowl. Dried it. Set it in the cabinet. And I waited. At 9:05 a.m., my uncle approached the counter. He slid the quitclaim deed across with a confident nod. My dad stood behind him, hands in his pockets, looking around like they'd be in and out in 10 minutes. The clerk took the document. Typed the parcel number into the system. Read the screen. Typed again. Then she stopped. I can't record this document, sir. My uncle leaned forward. Excuse me. The property title is held under the Tmain Family Irrevocable Trust. It was recorded in 2020. There's also a lease pendens filed this morning. That's impossible, my uncle said. My parents owned that property. Sir, the deed was transferred to the trust 6 years ago. The chain of title is clear. This quitclaim doesn't match the current ownership record. My dad stepped up beside him. There's no trust. Our parents never mentioned a trust. The clerk glanced between them. I'd recommend you speak with the trustee listed on the filing. A Margaret Caldwell. My uncle's hand went flat on the counter. His face strained. Margaret was seated in the waiting area near the door. Watching them leave. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The call came at 9:22 a.m. What did you do? My dad's voice was tight. Shaking. I accepted what Grandpa and Grandma left me. That's all. You went behind our backs with some lawyer we've never heard of. Margaret Caldwell has been the trust attorney for 6 years, Dad. You just never asked. A beat of silence. Heavy breathing. This is my parents' property, Iris. I'm their son. I kept my voice even. They didn't leave it to you because they didn't trust you with it. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. We'll fight this, he finally said. You can try. But the trust is irrevocable. That means even I can't dissolve it. There's nothing to undo. He hung up. No goodbye. Just a click and dead air. I set the phone on the porch railing. My hands were shaking. Not from anger. Not from fear. From the weight of saying those words to my own father. From knowing that the man who taught me to ride a bike was the same man who just tried to sell my grandmother's home out from under me. Then my phone buzzed again. An unfamiliar number. A man's voice, brisk and corporate. Miss Tmain, this is Carter Briggs from Ridgeline Development. We need to talk. He spoke fast. Factual. Already calculating his next move. We have a purchase agreement with Wade Tmain for the Cedar Lake property. He guaranteed clean title. We've just been informed there's a lease pendens on the parcel. My uncle does not own that property, I said. He never did. The cabin and land have been held in an irrevocable trust since 2020. I'm the sole beneficiary. A pause. Papers shuffling. He represented himself as the heir. Representation doesn't create ownership. Another pause, longer this time. Miss Tmain, is there any possibility of a sale? We'd be prepared to make a competitive offer directly to the trust. The property is not for sale. His voice hardened. Then we'll be pursuing our remedies against Mr. Tmain. Within the hour, Ridgeline confirmed what I already knew. The trust was valid. Wade had no authority. The purchase agreement was executed based on a misrepresentation of ownership. Their response was immediate. They were pursuing my uncle for breach of contract. The $45,000 penalty clause. Plus damages. That afternoon, Margaret called with one more piece of information. Her voice was careful. Direct. Iris, the quitclaim deed Wade tried to file included a notary stamp. I had the recorder's office pull a copy before they rejected it. The stamp doesn't match any registered notary in the county. It appears to be forged. I closed my eyes. That's a felony, isn't it? In this state. She paused. Yes. My uncle didn't just try to steal my cabin. He committed a crime to do it. My dad came home at 2 in the afternoon. He moved through the front door like a man carrying something invisible and very heavy. My mom was already in the kitchen, arms crossed, face blotched from angry crying. I was at the dining table. I didn't get up. He sat down across from me and stared at the table for a long time. I'm going to lose this house, Iris. His voice was flat. Empty. The bank is on me for $180,000. The store is gone. That cabin was supposed to be our way out. I know you're struggling, Dad. I'm sorry about the business. Then help us. The cabin was never your way out. It was Grandpa and Grandma's gift to me. A gift. He almost laughed. For what? You're 18. What does an 18-year-old need with a lakefront cabin? It's not about what I need. It's about what they wanted. My mom stepped in from the kitchen doorway. They were old, Iris. They weren't thinking clearly at the end. They were thinking clearly enough to hire a lawyer 6 years before they died. My dad slammed his palm on the table. Then a voice came through my phone. I'd called Margaret before he walked in and left the line open on speaker. Not to trap him. To save time. Mr. Tremaine, Margaret said, steady and professional. Contesting an irrevocable trust that was established 6 years before the Grantaires' deaths, with full legal capacity documented and witnessed, will cost you more in legal fees than the property is worth. I'd strongly advise against it. The kitchen was silent. The faucet dripped. My dad looked at me. Really looked. And for the first time I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger. Recognition. 2 hours later, my uncle called the house. I was in the hallway, close enough to hear every word. Ridgeline is suing me, he said, his voice stripped raw. $45,000 in penalties plus damages. They're saying I committed fraud. My dad's reply was cold. Colder than I'd ever heard him. Did you? I thought we owned it. You're a real estate agent, Wade. You do title searches for a living. How did you not check? I assumed. A long silence. Then my dad said, you assumed. And now I'm sitting here with nothing because you assumed. You wanted the money too. But I didn't forge a notary stamp. Another silence. Longer this time. I need a lawyer, my uncle finally said. So do I. My dad paused. Don't call this house again until you've talked to one. He hung up. I heard him sit on the couch. The springs creaked. Then nothing. Over the next 3 weeks, the consequences fell like dominoes. Each one made a sound. Ridgeline Development filed a civil suit against my uncle. Breach of contract. Misrepresentation of title. Demand for the penalty plus $60,000 in damages and legal costs. The county district attorney's office received a referral about the forged notary stamp. An investigator was assigned. My uncle's real estate license was suspended pending the outcome. His income stopped. Word traveled in a small town. Not because I said anything. But court filings are public record. By the second week, the story had made its way through the Rotary Club, the church parking lot, and the checkout line at the grocery store. My uncle called me once. Iris, please. Can you ask your lawyer to drop the lease pendants? If the title clears, I might be able to negotiate something with Ridgeline. Reduce the penalty. The lease pendants protects my property, Uncle Wade. It stays. Your grandparents would be ashamed of you. I let that sentence sit for a moment. Then I said, quietly, my grandparents are the ones who set this up. They chose this. They chose me. So I don't think shame is what they'd feel. He hung up. My dad didn't contest the trust. Margaret was right. The legal fees alone would have buried him. Instead, he did what he should have done 2 years earlier. He sold the building supply store at a loss, enough to negotiate a repayment plan with the bank. The house stayed. Barely. The savings didn't. My mom went back to work for the first time in a decade. A pharmacy on Lincoln Avenue. She didn't talk about it much. When neighbors asked, she said she wanted to stay busy. Nobody believed that. But nobody pushed. My dad and I didn't speak for 2 weeks. The house was quiet in a way that felt permanent. Like the silence had weight. Then my sister showed up at the cabin on a Sunday afternoon in May. Carrying a pizza box. Wearing the same oversized hoodie she'd had since 8th grade. "I brought lunch," she said. "Hope you like pepperoni." We sat on the porch with paper plates on our laps. The lake was still. A heron stood in the shallows near the dock, perfectly motionless, waiting for something below the surface. She ate slowly. She wasn't here for the pizza. "I didn't know about any of it," she finally said. "Mom and Dad never told me." "I know." Was I part of the problem? I looked at her. 15. Thin-shouldered. Still growing into whoever she'd become. She didn't choose any of this. She didn't ask to be the favorite. "You were a kid, Kels." "We both were." She nodded, then looked out at the water. "It's really beautiful here." Grandma used to say the same thing every single time she sat in that chair. My sister glanced at the empty chair next to mine. My grandfather's chair. The one with the armrest he sanded smooth. "Can I come back sometimes?" "Anytime." She leaned her head against my shoulder for just a moment. Then she sat up and took another bite. We didn't talk about our parents. We didn't talk about trusts or lawsuits or forged documents. We talked about her school project. About the heron. About whether the dock needed new planks this summer. The cabin didn't just protect property. It made space for something new to start. Early June. 6 a.m. I was on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the mist lift off Cedar Lake. The pines were sharp against a pale sky. A loon called somewhere out on the water. 2 long notes. Then silence. I didn't win against my family. There's no winning when the people who hurt you are the people who were supposed to protect you. You don't get a trophy for surviving something that should never have happened in the first place. But I kept a promise. And for the first time in my life, I was standing somewhere that belonged to me. Not because I fought for it. But because 2 people loved me enough to plan for exactly this. They saw the storm before I did. They built the shelter before I knew I'd need one. My grandparents couldn't stop my parents from being who they were. They couldn't make my dad less desperate or my mom less afraid. They couldn't keep my uncle from chasing money that wasn't his. But they could make sure I had ground to stand on. Literally. I thought about the letter I found in the desk drawer. My grandfather's words. The difference between something that has value and something that's valuable. This cabin has both. But only one of them can be measured in dollars. And my family spent 2 years focused on the wrong one. I sipped my coffee. The mist cleared. The lake turned blue. If you're listening to this and you feel like nobody's in your corner, I want you to hear me. Sometimes the people who protect you aren't the ones standing in front of you. Sometimes they planned for you years ago, quietly, without telling anyone. And sometimes all you have to do is show up, sign the paper, and keep the promise. Peace doesn't come from revenge. It comes from standing on something solid and knowing you built your life on it. That's my story. If it made you feel something, anger, relief, hope, or even just a little less alone, then it did what I hoped it would. Now I have a question for you. If you could protect one thing in your life, a place, a person, a promise, what would it be? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love to have you here for the next one. Take care of what matters. Even if no one else understands why.